Once again, grade 11 students, today we are going to talk about the role of women in development. It is very important to understand gender issues. We are still under development issues and so forth. So in this regard, we just want to quickly talk about the role of women in development. It is important that understanding gender issues and applying gender analysis is very important, or they are important tools for development class. For development, gender issues must be analyzed. We talk about the current trends of development. Women make up half of the world's population, and in most countries, there is discrimination against women in workplace. So, in that regard, what happens is we want to understand the role of women in development. So, as we know that statistically, the population of women to men is always that women are quite a lot of them. They are extremely more than men, and it is just a natural tendency or a natural expression that we have. However, most countries still have discrimination for women, even in workplaces. So we need to understand again poverty reduction programs rely on women for their implementation and success. When we look into development and we understand that development is very important tool for poverty reduction, for us to have poverty being dealt with, women must be also be given space, must be given the expression of their capacity and so forth. So now that reduction of poverty is development. So we are saying development cannot be complete without understanding the role of women in it. So it is very important that development programs that are targeting poverty reduction, improving the standards of people, the standards of life of people, and also upgrading the societies as a whole, they also need to be undertaken by women. So women also find themselves at the front line of major global issues. Major global issues, we are saying important global issues, which are such as food production. We are saying population growth and climate change. You understand the sensitivity to women to matters that affect humanity is quite extreme compared to men. So it is very important and it is quite significant that when development is to be analyzed comprehensively, we need to understand the frontline issues and the global matters in which women participate in. Food production, it is mothers who feed children. It is mothers who are responsible for families. It is mothers who are responsible or who are keenly involved in population growth, because we talk about childbearing and childbirth. It's a process which actually can be complete by the role of women. So population growth as well as climate change. Climate change, we are talking about the detriment effects, problems that arises due to climate change. So in this introduction, what development how women relate to development is that women are quite sensitive to development. Women are quite sensitive to humanity. Women are quite sensitive to the globe as a whole or to the environment as a whole. So, gender issues related to attitude, power, and access to resources, we need to unpin them. We need to understand them. We need to critique them and interrogate these matters. So now, the principle that everyone is entitled to rights without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, actually are stated in our Universal Declaration of Rights. So now, what needs to be understood here is that there mustn't be any discrimination. There mustn't be any segregation when it comes to the human rights issues. So human rights issues cannot be complete also without understanding development. We said development encompasses as well as uh, economic access, equality. We understand. So equality and also the understanding of human rights is a key peg. It's a standard of measurement of development. So in these matters, we are saying it is a principle that is underpinned within the Declaration of Universal Human Rights. So, one thing that we need to understand is that, but in many countries, women are left out of political decision making, despite having said that it is a declaration that human rights are an important and declaration, an important issue for everybody. In Africa, average female representation in parliament is less than 8%. It is still very low. In simple terms, we can say the representation of women in parliament remains a challenge. Men keep on being on the forerunners, and then women make up more than 25% of members of parliament, mostly in two African countries such as Seychelles and also South Africa. They are taking quite a lot with regards to the involvement and the participation of women in political matters. So they are critically good examples of women emancipation and women representation in the political spheres. So women and climate change in developing countries, resources of food, water, energy are largely controlled by women. In developing countries, resources such as these are largely controlled by women. I already said this is because of the sensitivity and the responsiveness of women to these ages, to these issues, responsiveness of women to matters such as those. So therefore, it is quite paramount and very important and significant that countries have to give space for women to control food, for women to control water, for women to control energy. We are talking about this even in the representation and the allocation of our parliamentarians and so forth. These are statistical or practical relevant examples that are given. In the 2010 Konkan agreements acknowledged that gender equality and effective participation of women are important effective actions on all aspects of climate change. So these are also some international agreements and also relevant matters that underpins the participation and the role of women in terms of development. So in aspects of climate change, women are actually endorsed and empowered that they need to be part of the actions towards climate change. And then women and education. Lack of access to formal education and training is a major barrier to women's employment and advancement in society. I guess we still have historical, these are historical as well as traditional practices that we still have, whereby women are supposed, or women were not given enough chances or were not given equitable chances when it comes to education, training, and also employment. Obviously, for people to be employed, they must be educated, they must have the skills, they must have the knowledge. So by denying and nullifying and avoiding them to access to education, it inevitably means that there is also denying of chances to employment and advancement in society. Advancement in society, we are talking about taking up in terms of taking up responsibilities in development. These responsibilities, there are quite a lot of them. Taking responsibilities even in governance. We are talking about the responsibilities in leadership and many other aspects that we can give as examples. So in Africa, female literacy rates are still lower than for men. African countries still have, but at least this, like I said, this is a historical phenomena. But as we look at it of today, we are having a world transforming society, a world developing economy, a world developing African continent. where chances to education are also catered for, even in our national constitutions and so forth, which actually gives the women the space for education and equally the same. So, given that education beyond 10 or more years of schools lead to, so what we are saying is that if education is given to women, if women are also given to, if education is given beyond 10 or more years of school, we are saying if women are given more years to school or in education, we will also have low fertility. Low fertility, we are talking about improvements in what? Improvement in reproductive health, improvement in reproductive health, which is a very important thing. Low fertility problems that are causing infertility sometimes are preventable, sometimes are manageable, but because of lack of education and training, people suffers these problems. They are they are succumbing problems or challenges that are to do with with fertility, which can also, which might not have been the case. So in other ways, we also have, if women are empowered in education, we also have improved infant survival, which we said is a very significant mark in what? In development. Infant mortality, we are saying reduction. This can address the problem. We are saying reduction in uh, child children death rate. The death rate, we are talking about mortality, the infant mortality rate, infant mortality rate, infant mortality rate, it is reduced because of education. So if education beyond 10 or more years, we are talking about we are saying two to women. What is the implications of that? The implications are such as these matters that we are addressing now: improved infant, reduction in infant mortality rate, which is a reduction in child death rate, and then which is a mark of what? Which is actually a good mark of improvement, or we can talk a good mark of what? Of development, that we can say. And then greater levels of infant and child development and education. So child development is also affected because of what? Because greater levels of infant and child development and education. This is because women are closely linked to child development. Children development. It is mothers, or mothers are the ones who are responsible in child development in terms of all these developmental phases and age key pages that we can look at. It is mothers who are involved in that. So education, also remember that we can talk about the grassroots of education, whereby children are taught the basics from their young age. As that is also done, we are saying we have got an improvement or a development marking towards education, which is also higher education is an indicator of development. We cannot separate improvement in education to development. We say these are key indicators of development. Hence, development and education are intertwined, or they are factors that cannot be separated. So we also want to look at education and what women, and we also want to look at women and HIV and AIDS. Women and HIV and AIDS, which we can also need to understand very well, that women and HIV and AIDS is another case that we must also critique and answer right now. Many women or many African countries are struggling with high rate and increasing rates of HIV infection, and the cost in human lives. In sub-Saharan Africa, HIV and AIDS infection rates are 4 to 6 times higher among women than men. So issues to do with HIV and AIDS, it's very high to women than men. We are saying HIV and AIDS, we have got high rates of it, of high rates of HIV and AIDS in women than men. Hence, it becomes a problem because we are saying it is 4 times. It they are 4 to 6 times higher than for men. So therefore, what happens is that women and girls are particularly at risk because of their lack of personal power. There is no recognition of their rights. We can say lack of personal power, which we can also define as to say in other words, rights and also choices and their sexuality, over their sexuality and reproductive function. We still have problems where women are used as baby making. They are specifically underpinned to say that in some cultures, because of cultural practices and traditions, women are mostly or are still uh, kept responsible for childbearing, and then they have no power over their sexuality and also reproductive function. In terms of family planning choices, sometimes women are not given that space. So, in that regards, we also have problems that are coming, which are very important and contributing towards HIV and AIDS, which might not have been the case given that the women or given that women are given their space. So, in other words, we are talking about lack of personal power and also lack of choices over reproductive processes and functions, creating and extending problems to do with HIV and AIDS. And then lastly, we can talk about women's employment of women's employment, which is women provide the backbone of the rural economy, and particularly so in much of sub-Saharan Africa. Most African countries rely on women on agriculture. Women are working in agriculture, which we are saying it is also important in terms of what? In terms of our rural communities. So food production is the major activities of rural women because, like I said, they are the ones who are responsible for feeding families. We talk about food production, we can talk about feeding of families, which is a main responsibility or a major responsibility for women. Their responsibilities and labor inputs often exceed those of men in most areas in Africa, which is because men sometimes they are not staying in rural areas. They go to urban areas to look for employment. They go to try to find better living conditions, which to say that they want to take care of the families. Hence, rural lives are left to women who are to take responsibilities in animal and crop farming as well as agriculture in general. So, women are often extremely hard. Women often work extremely hard for unjust rewards and inferior quality of life. So, it is a concern. So, therefore, to address in regard to development, it is a concern also to address in regard to development. So economic development needs the talents and contribution of women, which is why we say that women are important. So economic development, it must also seek, these are also human beings. We are saying they are human beings, they have got also talents, and also they have got also rights. So, in all these frameworks, we want to understand that the contribution of women in employment must also be taken into consideration. We talk about current practices like various uh, job practices or job types we are talking about the equality of equality in employment opportunities, which is quite a good typical example that we can talk about. We also have women in driving. We have got women in engineering. We have got women in education. We have got women in politics. We have got countries which have got presidents and also parliamentarians who are women as well. So in that respect, we are saying uh, some of the criticisms or some of the point that we might find in rising are not typically of the current situation, because we have got some radical transformations that are into place of today, ensuring that women are also given chances in various sectors. We can talk about women in health, women in so forth, doctors, pilots, and all these various high class professions, and which before or historically used to be for men alone. We have got drivers into buses or into whatever types of engineering that we might talk about, where women are taking the frontier roles in. So I want us to agree and accept that the role of women in development is a major, it's a point of concern. Also, understanding that we are having some developments which are in place towards these and positively contributing to equality and also the identification and implementation of human rights that are covered in all of our various countries and so forth. So thank you very much. I think we can add some more and more as we go. But in today's presentation, I think we can only end here and then just look forward to the next presentations so that we can keep on informed. So have a beautiful stay. Don't forget to turn on your notification button, like, and also subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much.